The room was a cavernous expanse, dark save for the cold, blue light emanating from screens embedded within the council chamber walls. It wasn't often that the Galactic Council assembled in full quorum. Rena Holt, the only human presence amid the vast assembly, felt the weight of countless eyes on her, both curious and hostile. Seated alone at the end of the room, she could see the holographic images of representatives from dozens of interstellar species. Each figure flickered in shades of alien light, their voices a murmur of distrust that seemed to coil around her. A voice crackled over the intercom, and the low hum of alien murmuring silenced. High Commander Zal Thursday, a towering figure with sleek silver scales and eyes like molten iron, took the central dais. His voice, calm but edged with authority, reverberated through the hall. It is the unanimous decision of this council that humanity poses a danger to galactic peace, Zal Thursday announced, each word punctuated by the rising tension in the room. He paused, allowing the weight of his statement to sink in. Their unpredictable nature, their adaptability, and their disregard for caution, these qualities render them incompatible with the harmonious order we have maintained for millennia. Rena's fists clenched at her sides, hidden beneath the polished table. Her heartbeat pounded against her ribs, but she kept her expression controlled, her posture stoic. She'd been briefed on this council meeting's potential severity, but she hadn't expected such a severe tone, such open disdain. She watched as a council member, an insectoid figure with iridescent wings and mandibles that clicked in anticipation, leaned forward. Earth's incursion into neighboring systems under our protection, cannot go unpunished. The insectoid hissed, its voice sharp and cutting. They defy restrictions, push boundaries, exploit resources. We must act before they disrupt the balance. Rena drew a slow, measured breath. Every accusation felt like an arrow aimed at her personally, a symbol of humanity's perceived recklessness. With respect, she began, her voice firm but carefully measured. We have respected the treaties established by this council. Humanity has acted with caution and intent to collaborate. Her words were met with a ripple of disdainful murmurs. Zal Thursday held up a scaled hand, silencing the room. The time for warnings has passed, Ms. Holt, Zal Thursday intoned, his eyes narrowing as they met hers. We must preserve peace, even if it means enforcing it with greater authority. We are hereby enacting a blockade of Earth's space. No vessels will enter or exit until humanity's compliance can be assured. The words hung in the air, a sentence more devastating than any weapon. Rena's mind raced. A blockade meant starvation, isolation, and the end of all Earth's ventures beyond its home star. Humanity would be suffocated, trapped within their own planet, forced into submission. She could already envision the panic, the desperation that would spread across Earth when the news broke. Steeling herself, Rena met Zal Thursday's gaze, her tone sharp with defiance. You underestimate us if you think we'll bow without question. Humanity has always thrived in the face of adversity. If you press us, we will resist. The council chamber erupted, alien voices overlapping in dissonant harmony, a chorus of outrage and disbelief. Zal Thursday merely raised his hand again, and silence fell once more. This is not a matter open for debate, Zal Thursday replied, his voice colder than ever. Humanity's time of leniency is over. The council's decision is final. Rena understood what she needed to do. There was no persuading them. She would need to find a way back to Earth, fast. She took a single step backward, acknowledging the council with a curt nod. But just as she turned, she heard a voice from one of the council's shadowed corners, a low, gravelly tone dripping with a dangerous promise. If humanity defies us, we will erase them. She felt the chill of the words settle into her bones. Without another word, she left the chamber, her footsteps echoing as she pushed through the grand doors. Outside, her shuttle awaited, engines humming softly, a lifeline in the depths of alien territory. She boarded, her mind already calculating the fastest route back to Earth. Her hands shook only once the door closed, and she let out the breath she'd been holding. As the shuttle tore through the stars, leaving the council's cold darkness behind, a new clarity settled over her. They would be coming for Earth, perhaps even sooner than she could warn her people. But they would not find humanity waiting to surrender. They would find a species prepared to fight, to claw for every inch of survival. In the silence of her ship, Rena whispered a vow into the emptiness. "You'll see what it means to corner humanity." And with that, she initiated the warp, launching her vessel toward the distant speck of blue and green she called home, carrying with her the seeds of resistance. The soft hum of the ship's engines fell silent as Commander Rena Holt's shuttle docked in Earth Command's sprawling hangar. Stepping out, she inhaled deeply, grounding herself. The familiar scent of metal and lubricant, mingling with the faint burn of plasma residue, anchored her amid the whirlwind of thoughts and emotions churning inside. She was home, but the urgency of her mission pressed down on her like a physical weight. She'd barely taken a step when a voice boomed through the hangar. "Commander Holt!" General Elias Moore approached, his towering form cutting through the bustling hangar personnel. His eyes, sharp and assessing, softened only slightly upon seeing her. "We received your message. The Council has officially declared humanity an enemy?" Rena met his gaze, her voice steady yet charged. "It's worse, sir. They're mobilizing forces. They'll impose a blockade within days." Her words hung heavy, but she could see the wheels turning behind Moore's stoic expression. Here was a man who'd seen humanity endure and prevail against impossible odds, yet even he seemed troubled. "Then we have no time to waste," Moore said, motioning her to follow him. They moved briskly through the corridors, past bustling soldiers and command staff, each face tense with purpose. In the command center, holographic displays projected the stark realities of Earth's vulnerable position. Moore wasted no time gathering his team, including Lieutenant Miko Vega, a young but brilliant tech strategist. Miko looked up from his console as they entered, his wide, dark eyes betraying a flicker of worry that belied his calm demeanor. "So, the Council's patience has run dry?" Miko asked, offering Rena a grim smile as they exchanged a brief nod. "More like it never existed," Rena replied, her tone clipped. "They see us as a threat that needs neutralizing." The word tasted bitter on her tongue, but it fueled the fire growing within her. General Moore addressed them both, his voice steady. "We're outmatched in terms of numbers and firepower. But if they think they'll march right over us, they're mistaken. Our advantage is knowing our territory, and they've underestimated our resolve." Rena nodded, a spark of defiance lighting her expression. "We can use guerrilla tactics, hit-and-run maneuvers, exploit every edge our knowledge of the terrain gives us. If we draw them into unfavorable zones, it levels the field." Miko's fingers danced over the control panel, pulling up a series of maps and schematics on the display. "I've been working on a few tactical approaches, stealth disruptors, drones we can deploy in orbit, diversions to scatter their formations. If we time it right, we'll catch them by surprise." Rena studied the plans, her mind racing with possibilities. "It's risky, but it's our best shot. We'll need to work fast, though. The Council won't hesitate once they're in position." Moore turned his focus on her, his voice low and filled with a rare gravity. "Commander, I need your leadership in this. You've seen the Council's ruthlessness up close. You know what they're capable of." Rena clenched her fists, the memory of the Council's cold, dismissive voices echoing in her mind. "I won't let them take Earth without a fight. We'll make sure every inch they gain costs them." Moore gave a curt nod, his gaze fierce. "Good. Begin preparations immediately. Coordinate with Miko on defense measures. We have a narrow window, but we'll use every second of it." As the meeting disbanded, Miko fell into step beside Rena, his usual humor muted. "You think we actually stand a chance?" he asked quietly, glancing at her. Rena met his gaze, her expression fierce. "We do if we remember who we are, Miko. They might have the resources, the experience, but we have something they'll never understand. They're united in fear, we're united in something stronger." She placed a hand on his shoulder, squeezing briefly. "They don't know what it's like to fight for a home." Miko's lips twitched into a faint smile. "I'd follow you anywhere, Commander." He looked back at the display, his face hardening with resolve. "Let's show them just how wrong they are." Rena watched as he returned to his station, his fingers moving swiftly over the controls. The air was thick with the weight of impending battle, each person in the command center readying for the inevitable clash. Yet there was something in the way they moved, in the focus of their expressions, that reminded her of why humanity had endured so much. It wasn't just survival. They fought because they believed in a future worth defending. She stood at the edge of the command center, taking one last look at the men and women working tirelessly, their faces a mix of steely determination and quiet courage. Each of them was a testament to the strength of the human spirit, to the resilience that the Council could never comprehend. In the pit of her stomach, a feeling of anticipation grew, blending with a fierce pride. They would come. The Council would unleash its full force. But Earth would be ready. Humanity would meet them with a resistance so unyielding, it would become legend. And as Rena Holt turned toward the preparations ahead, a single thought echoed within her: let them come. Rena's pulse quickened as the first enemy vessels slipped into Earth's orbit, their dark forms casting shadows over the blue planet below. The quiet hum of Earth's Defense Command buzzed with an electric intensity. Rows of officers, each manning a console, watched intently as the alien fleet moved into formation. No words were necessary. The gravity of the moment hung heavily in the air, filling every corner of the room with a tense anticipation. Commander Holt! General Moore's voice broke through the silence, firm and steady. They're here. Rena nodded, her eyes glued to the tactical display as wave after wave of enemy ships filled the screen. The Council had sent more than they'd expected, a nearly endless fleet of sleek, angular ships that gleamed ominously against the stars. They're posturing, testing our defenses, Rena observed, her voice low but resolute. They want us to make the first move. Moore crossed his arms, his expression hardened. Then let's not disappoint them. He motioned to Miko, who was stationed at the control console, fingers hovering over the array of commands that would deploy Earth's first line of defense. Miko's face was a mask of concentration, though a bead of sweat traced a line down his temple. With a sharp nod from Rena, he punched the sequence. Moments later, the silence was broken by the roar of Earth's defensive turrets activating, sending pulses of high-energy plasma bolts into the void. Streams of energy arced toward the alien ships, illuminating the darkness with bursts of vivid blue and white. The first wave of the Council's vessels scattered in response, their evasive maneuvers swift and calculated. But Earth's forces weren't waiting to play defense. Deploy the drones, Rena ordered, her voice firm. Target their flanks. Force them into our line of fire. Miko's hands moved deftly, and dozens of automated drones launched from hidden bays, their sleek forms disappearing into the vastness of space before reappearing in coordinated swarms. They converged on the alien fleet's vulnerable edges, weaving in tight formations that forced the Council's ships into defensive clusters. The Council hadn't anticipated this level of resistance, and the tactical display flickered with the light of explosions as their vessels took hits they'd never expected. They're scrambling, Miko muttered, a hint of satisfaction creeping into his tone. Rena allowed herself a small, grim smile, but the battle was far from over. More waves of Council ships surged forward, and the space above Earth became a tapestry of fire and light, each clash a testament to humanity's determination. Alarms blared as two alien ships broke through the first line of defense, bearing down on Earth with a menacing focus. Redirect all firepower to intercept, Rena commanded, her voice sharp, slicing through the noise. The command center burst into action, officers relaying orders, screens flickering with incoming data. Earth's cannons pivoted, releasing a volley of concentrated energy that struck the incoming vessels, shattering them into fragments that scattered across the orbital field. Moore's gaze flickered to Rena, admiration sparking in his normally stoic eyes. You're keeping them on their toes. They underestimated us, Rena replied, the fire in her voice unmistakable. They thought they'd be met with fear, but all they've found is resolve. But even as they repelled wave after wave, Rena could feel the weight of their endurance thinning. Their resources weren't infinite, and the Council's forces seemed boundless, a relentless tide pressing forward. The aliens had brought enough firepower to sustain a prolonged siege, and it was clear they intended to crush Earth through sheer persistence. Just then, a shrill alarm sounded, and Miko's voice cut through the chaos. "Commander, they're deploying shock troops. Landing pods are breaking through the atmosphere." Rena's stomach tightened. Ground combat meant a whole new level of threat. She glanced at Moore, who met her gaze with a grim nod. "We'll handle the skies," he said, his voice a steady promise. "You take the ground forces. Don't let them establish a foothold." Without missing a beat, Rena turned to Miko. "Activate all surface defenses. We'll give them a warm welcome." She clenched her fists, focusing on the determination welling up inside. "Prepare our ground units. This is where we hold the line." Miko's eyes were bright with resolve. "They won't know what hit them, Commander." As she prepared to lead the defense on Earth's surface, Rena felt an overwhelming surge of purpose. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and facing an enemy that saw them as nothing more than an inconvenience. Yet humanity had endured worse odds before, and the fire that burned in each of her team's eyes told her they would endure again. "Bring every unit to red alert," she ordered. "We're not just defending Earth. We're defending everything we are." As the skies blazed with streaks of light and the ground forces readied themselves, Rena took one last glance at the tactical display. She could see the Council's ships, their numbers daunting, their resolve unyielding. But she knew, deep in her bones, that humanity's will was stronger. Steeling herself, she whispered, more to herself than anyone else, "Let's show them what it means to fight for a world worth saving." With that, she strode from the command center, her heart a steady drumbeat of defiance, her mind focused on the battle that lay ahead. Behind her, the sound of Earth's defenses echoed through the corridors, a song of resistance reverberating into the vastness of space. The ground beneath Rena's feet trembled as the first shockwave tore through the base. Dust fell from the ceiling, drifting down like ash over the hastily assembled defense lines. The Council's landing pods had breached the atmosphere, their occupants now flooding Earth's surface in overwhelming numbers. The air was charged with tension, the distant rumble of explosions echoing like thunder. "All units, hold your positions," Rena commanded, her voice crackling over the comms. Around her, soldiers gripped their weapons, eyes wide but resolute. She knew each of them felt the same weight pressing down, the unspoken understanding that this battle could be Earth's last. Yet none of them faltered. Beside her, Miko was hunched over a portable console, his fingers flying across the keys as he managed defense protocols. "We're rerouting power to perimeter shields, but it won't hold for long," he murmured, glancing up with a grimace. His gaze met Rena's, and despite the fatigue in his eyes, his determination hadn't wavered. "Every minute we buy is another chance," Rena replied, setting her jaw. "They may outnumber us, but they can't match our grit." Suddenly, the distant sound of weapons fire intensified, rolling closer like a coming storm. Rena's hand tightened on her rifle as alien figures began to emerge from the smoke. Tall and armored, the Council's shock troops moved in sync, their steps relentless and unyielding. "Steady!" she called out to her soldiers, her voice steadying the jittery nerves around her. She leveled her rifle, exhaling slowly. "Aim for the joint seams, they're weaker there." Miko raised his weapon beside her, his usually light-hearted expression replaced by one of steely resolve. "Here they come." The first clash was brutal, an explosion of sound and fury as human and alien forces collided. Energy bolts seared through the air, filling it with the scent of scorched metal and ozone. Rena ducked behind a barrier, her weapon firing in short, controlled bursts. She could feel the ground pulse with each impact, the vibrations shooting through her boots as she stood her ground. One alien soldier moved closer, its steps heavy and purposeful. Rena squeezed the trigger, a single shot piercing the gap in its armor. It stumbled, collapsing with a shuddering thud. Around her, soldiers followed her lead, targeting weak points with relentless precision. Despite the Council's overwhelming numbers, Earth's defenders held firm, refusing to yield even an inch of ground. Between shots, Rena glanced over at Miko, whose quick adjustments on the console were the only reason their shields hadn't collapsed entirely. His face was a mask of concentration, sweat beading along his brow as he redirected power flows and reinforced defensive lines. "Commander!" Miko shouted over the din, his voice barely audible above the chaos. "If we keep this up, we'll burn out the main generators in 5 minutes!" Rena cursed under her breath, her mind racing. 5 minutes. It wasn't long, but maybe, just maybe, it would be enough. She scanned the battlefield, looking for any sign of weakness, any chance to turn the tide. And then she saw it, a slight lag in the Council's formation, their forces thinning on the eastern front. "Squad 3, with me!" she called out, signaling her team. "We're hitting the eastern line. If we break through, we can push them back and buy the rest of the base more time." Without hesitation, she and her squad broke from cover, weaving through the battlefield in a coordinated sprint. The alien soldiers, caught off guard, hesitated, and in that momentary lapse, Rena's team struck. The assault was swift and brutal, tearing through the weak point in the Council's formation. The tide shifted, and for a fleeting moment, hope flickered through the ranks of Earth's defenders. But the victory was short-lived. An incoming barrage from above hammered down, scattering debris and forcing them to retreat. The Council's forces were unrelenting, adapting with brutal efficiency. Rena stumbled back, coughing as dust filled her lungs. She locked eyes with Miko across the smoke-filled battlefield, and in his gaze she saw a glimmer of understanding. They were at their limit, but they weren't finished yet. "Commander Holt!" General Moore's voice crackled through the comms, barely audible over the noise. "We have one last option." Rena's heart pounded as she listened to his instructions. It was a desperate maneuver, one that could obliterate their position along with the Council's forces. But it was also their only chance to end this siege. With a steadying breath, Rena relayed the plan to her troops. "Fall back to the inner perimeter. We're initiating a coordinated charge on my signal." As her team pulled back, she glanced around at the faces of her comrades, each one etched with exhaustion and defiance. They were battered, bruised, but still unbroken. Taking a final breath, she raised her rifle high. "For Earth!" she called, her voice carrying through the din, a battle cry that resonated through the battered walls. "For Earth!" her soldiers echoed, their voices a collective roar of defiance. On her signal, they surged forward, a final wave against an unstoppable force. The ground shook as explosions erupted, engulfing friend and foe alike in blinding light. And as the dust settled, the remnants of the Council's forces retreated, scattered and broken. Rena stood amidst the devastation, breath ragged but heart resolute. They had held. They had survived. And the stars bore witness to humanity's final stand, a testament to their unyielding spirit.